So I can't help but notice, that everyone who donates to me is donating to me to shit on Bloomberg. There's a lot of here.
I'm the only one here that I think that's ever started a business. Is that fair?
There's a lot of anti-Bloomberg hysteria in my community. And, look, you donated this as well. See, it's very cute. From the hit movie Shark Tale, that's great. I want to talk to you a little bit about Bloomberg because, and I'll talk about Bloomberg generally, but there's sort of an underlying theme that I want to get at here. Maybe it's a little circle jerky. I think it deserves to be said. Bloomberg is a fucking monster. Bloomberg is a fucking monstrous human being. With non-disclosure agreements, spread far and wide, more sexual harassment cases or allegations against him than have even been levied against Trump, known to those who have worked under him to be a brutish authoritarian. Bloomberg is a fucking monstrous person. Look at this. You guys want to see something horrible? Look at this. This is back when Bloomberg was mayor. Excuse the video footage.
For workers' rights or immigrant rights and for gay rights.
We're watching this together.
Off the,
Mayor, that's like your theme music.
Okay. Ninja thing. We said,
So this is a press conference, and Mayor Bloomberg is trying to say something. He's giving a speech, and he's got a crew behind him, but he stops.
Something's playing. Can we just stop this and maybe we'll start again? Okay. I understand that. Still turn it off.
His aide tries to explain to him what's happening. What is happening? I would love to explain to you guys. But how about we bask in the entirety of this 2-minute clip where he puts the press conference on hold? What is he doing exactly to put the press conference on hold? Right before Mayor Bloomberg was to speak, some music started playing which made him freak out more than a little. It turned out that music was from a recorder owned by disabled reporter Michael Harris of The Examiner. Harris later told Politico New York a photographer knocked over his jacket which held the recorder. When it fell onto the ground, the recorder started playing. Harris said he didn't first realize where the noise was coming from, but once he did, he could not reach down to get to the recorder easily. He's in a wheelchair, you see. So during the press conference, Bloomberg continued to show his irritation, as City Room reports. Bloomberg apparently kept looking at Harris while saying, maybe we should take everything outside. Harris was quite upset by the mayor's behavior, telling Politico in New York that he was quite embarrassed at being singled out like that. I think the mayor took something very minor and made it into something major. And it was a very cheap shot at me. I do think an apology would be in order here. Politico New York also has video of the incident, which we just skimmed through. Another reporter offered some choice words about the mayor to the Village Voices running scared. What a dickhead. Michael is a good guy and doesn't deserve this shit from Mayor Midget. I formally disavow the height shaming, all short men are kings, from another reporter and his choice words. But I really want to, you know how one of the best ways you can tell whether a person is of good character is by seeing how they treat service staff? That's a really good indicator. How do you treat people who are at your beck and call? When you're in a position of authority over somebody, how do you treat those people? That is how you determine a person's character. It's entirely possible for a person to be nice and amicable to people of equal or greater social standing, but when a person is of lower social standing, that is when the behavior, really matters. There's a reason why, in American Psycho, he was out there, killing homeless folks. The inherent sort of psychopathy of power differentials and what it does to people leads to a sort of a much more truthful telling of people's underlying behavior. And in this, Bloomberg, no shit, because he heard some audio device, which was apparently so quiet that it didn't even pick up on the audio of the clip, watched as a reporter in a wheelchair was struggling to pick up his recorder, which had fallen from his jacket, and stared at him, holding the entire press conference on hold, repeatedly insisting that the reporter leave. Just imagine off camera, a man in a wheelchair bending over to his left to try and retrieve his jacket, which has fallen to the ground. Can you feel it?
All right. Let me start again, because this is just too important to get disruptive. And maybe we just take everything outside.
Let me start again, because this is too important to be disruptive. Maybe you should just take it outside. And then he doesn't even start again.
Okay.
He doesn't do it! Literally, the whole thing. He holds the entire room up of dignitaries and politicians and press to all stare. Have you ever been in a room with like an abusive parent or like an abusive teacher or anything like that? And somebody does some minor thing? Have you ever seen, you've seen this maybe at restaurants sometime, where like a waiter will minorly fuck something up and like a shithead fucking like a wine mom from the suburbs, you know, whose fucking husband has like a broker position, will fold her arms and go like, I'm sorry. A little bit of soup spilled out of this bowl and onto the plate. Don't you think you should do a little bit of a better job of keeping the soup inside of the bowl? And she's saying it loud enough for other people to hear. And you know, like the waitress is like trying to like keep it together. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, no, I get you're sorry and stuff. Just, you know, I paid a lot of money to be here and for the soup. And I just think that maybe, you know, you're like, that was pretty careless of you. Don't you think you should apologize? This is unironically worse than Trump. Trump mocked a disabled like guy. Remember, he did like the thing that was a reporter too, I think. But he did it for a laugh. He did it to play a crowd. And I'm not saying that's good. That's very, very bad. But he's doing it because he's a cruel, disgusting person who likes playing for the attention of others. But Trump didn't feel contempt for the disabled person that he was mocking. For Trump, it was just a bit. Bloomberg is contemptuous at this person, and he deliberately held the entire room together in a shared, silent antagonism against that one disabled reporter for the crime of having his jacket with a recorder in it bumped off of the wheelchair. Bloomberg is a hideous human being. He is genuinely disgusting to me. And this isn't, now there are some positions in which he's better than Trump. I mean, the gun stuff, I mean, wait, I'm very pro Second Amendment, so I actually scratched that. I want my guns. Climate change, he acknowledges that climate change is a thing. But I genuinely do believe that Bloomberg is a much more pure representation of the fascist ideal than anything you could ever get from Trump. It's almost like the yin-yang of fascism, actually. It's perfect because Trump represents all of the stupid, hyper-nationalistic populism that you get from fascism. And Bloomberg represents the economic wing of fascism, the merging of state and corporation. Bloomberg is an obscenely a wealthy human being, just a truly phenomenally wealthy human being. What is he worth? Like 60 billion? I mean, he's worth a lot. Let me tell you, folks, if our response to Trump being put in office is to put Bloomberg in office, there's just no hope for self-funding anymore. You realize that, right? There will never be a presidential candidate who is capable of garnering as much grassroots support as Bernie Sanders. It will not happen. Bernie Sanders is the upper limit. What Bernie Sanders has been able to do is already fucking insane. But if we toss this to Bloomberg, what we're essentially saying, was something the DNC has been trying to say, I think, for a long time now, is that there is simply it doesn't matter. It does not matter. You know. From now on, we will be capitulating our higher offices exclusively to the uber wealthy. That, I mean, from Bloomberg's obscene personal wealth to his stop and frisk policies, and then lying about stop and frisk. That was great in the debates. You know, he keeps saying he's disavowed stop and frisk. Do you know what he actually did? He kept stop and frisk going as long as he could. There are leaked recordings now of him saying that he believes stop and frisk should be targeting black people more and white people less. He said that stop and frisk is highly effective. There are recordings of him saying that the singular profile for all criminals is just like a young black guy, you know? Truly, I mean, he's undeniably racist. And he only backed off of stop and frisk when when the fucking courts said it was unconstitutional. And even after the courts said it was unconstitutional, Bloomberg continued to defend it until right before the presidential candidacy. And then he lied about it in the most recent debate. In the most recent debate, he said he backed off of it long before he actually did. Mike, he loves his stop and frisk, okay? He loves it. He wishes he could be out there in the beat, you know, with his private army. That's what he called the New York Police Department, by the way, his private army. If that's not fascistic, I simply do not know what is. We've got all the tenets, really, of a reactionary. We've got, you know, the merging of the corporate wing and the power of the state through his obscene wealth. You know, that's fairly obvious. He hasn't had to garner any grassroots support. He is literally just buying his way into the office. You know, he's hiring so many people right now that local politicians are having trouble finding campaign organizers, staffers, and advisors because he's buying all of them. He's just buying everyone. He'll do anything. You can walk up to Bloomberg with like a crayon drawing of like impact font over his picture, and then top text Trump couldn't, bottom text Bloomberg could, you know, and he'll hand you $1,000. He'll hand you like, wow, that's a great meme, kiddo. Here you go. You know, just throw. There's something very scary to me about someone who is sociopathic and deeply, deeply contemptuous of everyone who isn't him, but is also intelligent enough to make $60 billion and be mayor of New York for several terms. Trump is a fucking clown, a laughingstock, a buffoon who has clowned his way through his entire life. But he is, at least in his office, highly incompetent. He couldn't even get Obamacare repealed. He hasn't had the wall built. He's been pulling back on a fuck ton of his policy positions. He can't even fill the vacant government positions that he would need to fully fuck our government. He's fucking incompetent. He's a fucking buffoon. The worst thing that Trump does is sort of enable a broader narrative of hyper-nationalist racism and empower the people who want to more competently, you know, sort of take that narrative to the policy streets. But he personally is a hideously incompetent person. Bloomberg is not. You know that Bloomberg has made more money since he started campaigning than he has spent for his campaign? He's not even losing money. $300 million to him? Like this isn't even his principal. We're touching his interest. Do you have any idea? He has limitless money. He has moon money. It is inconceivable how fucking wealthy he is. But you know, I mean, he opposes a minimum wage increase. So, you know, money for him, you know, not for all other folks. That kindly, you know, everyone knows. You can go look on 1,000 accounts if you want to of his mistreatment of his workers. This is nearly Amy Klobuchar levels of mistreatment, you know, of the people who work around you, possibly worse. I mean, everyone knows that one story. Did they bring this up in the debate stage where a woman said that she was pregnant and Bloomberg told her to kill it? You know why he did that? Because anyone who works for him, who isn't currently working for him, as a woman wouldn't be, as she, you know, gives birth, can't do that at work at the moment, you know, is an enemy to him. You want to see this quote that I found? This is really good. This is the attitude I want from a president. Are you ready? These are little tidbits about Bloomberg. He refuses to attend going-away parties for departing Bloomberg employees. They've become bad people, period, he once said. We have a loyalty to us. Leave, and you're them. In a time of growing economic inequality, where the greatest hardships felt by most Americans are ones which are fundamentally tied to the division between them and the upper class, putting a president in office who believes that you become an enemy of his establishment when you choose to leave or retire? Bloomberg is, and I want to be totally clear about this, whether or not you think he'd be a better or worse president than Trump, an infinitely worse person than Trump. I am not being hyperbolic when I say this. I'm not doing it to drive attention or whatever. He is a horrible human being. He is a miserable, wretched, depraved, subhuman piece of shit. And any decent world would have seen his end a very long time ago. But he might end up becoming president of the United States of America. It's entirely possible that his entire campaign is to try and kneecap Bernie Sanders, because under Bernie Sanders' wealth tax, he would pay a very large amount of money, as he should. He should pay all of his money. I don't think he's entitled to a goddamn fucking penny in his bank account personally. But we can settle at the moment for Bernie Sanders' wealth tax. It's entirely possible he just doesn't want to pay that tax, so he's just trying to keep Bernie from being president. Which is, great. That's great. I love the fact that a presidential candidate who has gotten to where he is, whether or not you like his policies, on the backs of millions of Americans, is capable of being in any way, shape, or form challenged by an individual with no individual support and a fuck ton of money. Can we really just think about that for a second? How much is on the line, and how overwhelmingly one individual is capable of single-handedly rocking the entire political process through the weight of his wealth alone. Isn't that extraordinary? I think that's incredible. I think we are truly blessed to live in a time where the underlying antagonisms between democracy and capitalism are so evident. It might have been harder back, in the 1940s or 50s after the New Deal. That's what the New Deal was about, It was about saving capitalism, Band-Aids and all that. But now, we're in a situation where there are presently neoliberals who are mocking Trump by saying that Bloomberg has more money than Trump. And they are touting the wealth of somebody who may very well be the single worst human being I have ever spent any amount of time looking into. From the virulent sexism, the predatory behavior against women, the fact that he was in Epstein's fucking black book and has definitely found himself arm deep in 12-year-olds. Again, he's in the fucking black book. What do you want? What is it with these billionaires and kids? It's a conspiratorial to say. I don't know. I've heard Destiny's fan base will accuse me of being conspiratorial no matter what I say. When the video gets put, is it conspiratorial to call people pedophiles when they're in the fucking Epstein black book? Maybe, is that bad? I don't know. As somebody who is friends with Trump, mind you, Bloomberg does not have an antagonistic relationship with Trump. They do the exact same thing that all other wealthy people do. Wealth transcends politics. It doesn't matter if you're left or right. All fucking billionaires get together. They all go on fucking golf. They all go golfing together. They all rape children together on the Lolita Express. They all, because what does politics mean to them? For us, life is political. For us, whether we get healthcare or not, we live or die, no. It means something to us. For them, the only thing that really affects their lives is taxes. That's it. That's the only thing that affects them politically. That's literally the only thing that impacts the livelihood of like billionaires, because everything else they can just pay for. Taxes affects their availability of wealth. Maybe you have like tariffs or broader business economic decisions, but for the most part, like it's just that they just care about tax policy, you know? And they all want the same tax policy. They all want to pay as little as possible. So they're friends, you know? Who cares if this guy is okay with gays and this guy thinks gays are degenerate sodomites, you know? Whatever. Who cares? Like, you know, we care about the tax thing. That's what matters. That's our shared class interest. We have the overwhelming racism he demonstrated with the stop and frisk policies, which he has literally admitted were based fundamentally on prejudice, discrimination, and profiling. And which he has defended even after it being found unconstitutional by the courts, you know. He has, I mean, his behavior towards the people who have worked under him is abhorrent, and he, as a multi-billionaire, has single-handedly, with money that is literally just the interest, not even the principal, the interest on his overall dragon's hoard of wealth. With that money alone, he is able to single-handedly fucking throw a wrench into the DNC process. Not because he's charismatic, not because he is, you know, touting off his great record, but because he has bought ads on every fucking platform at all times of every day. And he has plastered his face across the screen of every person's, you know, electronic devices in America. And that's all it takes. Noam Chomsky, you know, Gnome Chomsky, who is still not dead, thankfully, in spite of his advanced age, recently had an email conversation with another person where he said that he still would support Bloomberg over Trump because Bloomberg, at the very least, would promote climate change policy, whereas Trump would not, and that's the single greatest existential threat to the planet. I'm inclined to agree on this point. I am inclined to agree on this point. Though I think there is an interesting discussion to be had on this subject, I think I lean towards agreeing with Chomsky. Even with Bloomberg, I do still think that's an overwhelming point in favor of a Bloomberg presidency over a Trump presidency. But I will say this. If you leave climate change off the table, if we ignore that point, we say they have the same position, I think that Bloomberg is an infinitely worse human being than Trump and would be a far more dangerous, destructive, regressive president than Trump ever could be. Because Bloomberg is sinister, he is competent, he knows how to delegate and fill slots beneath him, and he knows how to keep his mouth shut and not start a fucking media circus every time he wants to do something stupid. And I'm not even entirely sold on the idea that Bloomberg is going to do anything about climate change. But yeah. Fun times.